Welcome to the BuyBox Experts podcast. We bring to light the unique opportunities brands face in today's e-commerce world.
Hi, I'm James Thompson, one of the hosts of the BuyBox Experts podcast. I'm a partner with BuyBox Experts and formerly the business head for the Selling on Amazon team at Amazon, as well as the first account manager for the Fulfillment by Amazon program. I'm co-author of the book Controlling Your Brand in the Age of Amazon and co-founder of the Prosper Show, one of the largest continuing education conferences for Amazon sellers in North America. Today's episode is brought to you by BuyBox Experts. BuyBox Experts makes ambitious brands actionable and unbeatable. When you hire BuyBox Experts, you receive the strategy optimization and marketing performance to succeed on Amazon. Go to buyboxexperts.com to learn more. Today, our guest is Andrew Schydlowsky, CEO and founder of TrackStreet, a firm that monitors what's happening with brands across the internet and delivers actionable market data so brand teams can focus on building stronger customer relationships, driving sales, and building the bottom line. A serial entrepreneur, Andrew founded several other internet-related companies before TrackStreet. Andrew brings his nearly 25 years of e-commerce experience to us today, sharing best practices on how brands can track what is happening to their products and branding online. So welcome, Andrew, and thank you for joining us today on the BuyBox Experts podcast.
Hi, James. Really great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Andrew, I want to start our discussion today by getting your thoughts on how you've seen brands evolve the way that they deal with online channels over the past 20 years.
It's a great question, James. I started my career selling my own brand online direct to consumer in '98. So really kind of the dawn of e-commerce. And I know you go back a long time as well. And there's just been this evolution. I myself was a e-commerce seller on every channel over the years, and moved lots of volume in every channel you can imagine. And I remember there was a time when I felt like there's this little upstart named Amazon that came into my space. Now I felt like I was pounding my fist at the sky, not really knowing what I was screaming about. But there's been this real evolution that I saw, particularly when I was a top seller for many brands. Mm-hmm. And for a long time, they kind of ignored internet. They were very retail focused. And then the conversation became, hey, so this internet thing is really disrupting what we're doing. But you guys don't have any overhead. Meanwhile, of course, ignoring my huge facility and people running around. But hey, our stores are complaining a little bit. We need to fix this. But they didn't really understand what they needed to fix or how to fix it. And so they would kind of choose the person who was the largest flag flying, in that case was me sometimes, to say, hey, we want you to fix this, but not really understanding that if one person made a change, it didn't really matter, because where, in retail, it takes you 15 minutes to drive from store to store, mm-hmm. Online, it takes you seconds to go find another vendor. And so I feel like there's been this evolution of bit by bit understanding. So, this is like early days before MAP was real, and people are trying to find different ways of putting pressure on their partners to start conforming. And then the conversation started changing, and they started understanding. We have started having conversations like, hey, the internet most likely isn't going to go away. So how about thinking about what it could do for you, not just what it could do, what it's doing to you? And there's been this evolution. So people have gotten more sophisticated, started to understand more, started to learn about the possibilities. And the internet's an incredible marketing machine, right? So the ability to get real-time feedback into what you're doing right and wrong and drive sales through channels is just incredible. It's just an incredibly powerful tool if you use it. And people are starting to get it. So they've gone from ignoring it to hoping it would go away,
right,
to begrudgingly accepting it, and now starting to understand how to harness it. And that's where people like you come in, we come in, is how do you harness these channels so that they work in context of your larger sales strategies, and that you own your channels, drive acceleration through them in a way that makes a flywheel, because all these channels can support each other. But the people are just starting to get there.
So you talked about what the internet does to you versus what you can do with the internet. We'll talk a lot more about that in our discussion coming up here. But I would argue that there are still a lot of brands that haven't figured out that the internet is here to stay, and they better integrate some aspect of e-commerce into their overall channel management strategy. I'm just amazed by brands that are doing tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars that are still so retailer focused and essentially digging a hole for themselves that will take time to get out of. So let's transition and let's talk for a few minutes about TrackStreet. What does your firm do? What approach do you take to helping brands with MAP violations? How do you think about unauthorized sellers? What is your philosophy on all of this?
So for us, it really comes down to the basics. We begin by giving our partners control over where their products are sold. For us, it's really about regaining control. And there are three phases of how we can talk to people about internet commerce, multi-channel commerce. And it's really about protect, assess, and grow. And each of those pieces has some steps within it. But it's really for us about the basics. Let's make sure the right people are touching your product at the right time, maybe at the right price points, and to know what's happening really at the point of sale in all ways. So it's kind of like thinking about what would you want to have happen in the retail world when you're walking down the aisle and see your products, what's there. So a lot of brands think about the retail world, and they've got great controls in place. But it's really time to think about digital shelf. So taking what you might want to do in the retail world, but applying it online. It's actually tremendously much easier online, putting controls in place. But for us, part of our tech process is not only knowing who's touching your product and where, but really ensuring that where it's being sold, you're maximizing opportunity for sale. And that could be making sure the images are right, the content is right, making sure that if someone's screaming about your product, having an issue next to the point of sale in terms of a review, that you're addressing it. Really easy stuff. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit there. That's really where we start. It's about regaining visibility and then control over the channel. And for us, the key to that is not just information, but action. How do you go to sleep at night and make sure that computers and systems then action things for you, so you come to work in the morning and you're empowered to do what you're hired to do, which is make impact on your market, not push buttons.
So for a company to realistically be in a position that they're thinking about using your service, what are some of the questions they have to have already worked through in their mind, or priorities they've already evaluated and said, we need to do something here?
Yeah, so the first is they've had to make a decision that internet's not going to go away. That they got to meet it head on, and that you can't rely upon your resellers to do your job for you. And what it really comes down to is relationships. And it's really about making commitment to support your reseller network across channels. And the first step is really committing to say, you know what, we are going to meet this internet issue head on. We're going to regain control of it and then empower our partners and start thinking about the world of pie. So we've got a pie in front of us. The pie is so big. Now, do you want to let people just stick out their forks and start eating from it? And everybody's just having a fork, everybody gets little bites, there's always people chewing at the pie? Or do we want people to help us make more pie? And so we're kind of reframing the conversation of, who are your partners? Are they added value? And how do you support them so they can help you make more pie? And that's really the first step for us, is meeting brands when they're ready to make some decisions. Some of them are hard, but putting structure in place. But what we do know is when you take control back, put a plan in place, and then stick to it, you're consistent, is that markets respond really well. Your partners come into play, and you do see that sales expand. And so it's really consistency through, but the first step is making a decision that you're going to actively participate in this.
Okay, so I'm a brand. I've decided that for better or for worse, I've got to have a presence online. Talk to me about some of the big distribution challenges you've seen brands encounter when they first dip their toe in the water and say, okay, I need to have an online strategy. What are the bad actions they're taking? What are the bad non-actions they're taking? What are you seeing through the brands that you're exposed to?
Yeah, so the first thing I think that people start doing is they start looking on the internet and they've heard about this thing called MAP. And they say, we need MAP.
Yep.
Because people are doing it. Right? And people are even asking us if we have one. So yeah, we're going to have one. And they go Google something, they pull it down, and usually it's GoPro's MAP policy, something along those lines. It's got great SEO.
Yes.
And they put that in place. So first, they have a policy that's not really theirs. It doesn't fit with their business strategies, and then they put it into market. But the problem with a policy that isn't yours and you haven't truly committed to is that you now something you said you're going to enforce, but you have no way to do it. And there's really nothing worse than saying you're going to do something and not following through. Right? So you're really doing is burning trust of all your partners. And so what we see is a lot of times people come to us when they've done all this stuff, committed to do things that they can't really follow through on, and everybody's upset with them, and things are in free fall. So, it's really about, you are going to retrain your market, and you're going to make a statement that your partners matter, your brand value is paramount, and you're going to put a structure in place. And so resale policies, where be it MAP, a UPP, an authorized dealer program, resale distribution policies, are all a foundation at which your entire sales program is built. So it's like building a house. If you build it on sand, it's going to crumble. Really critical that there is a set of policies in place that foundationally sets you up for success later. That you have legal guidance, it's firm, can force consistently and proactively. Right? You don't want to pick and choose who you call and who you enforce against and who you don't, and wishy-washy on it. It has to be unilateral, keeps you out of trouble. But this is kind of the first step. So there's reasons why you might want a MAP, or you might want an authorized dealer program. But the whole goal of all of this is to give you the power to make decisions for the best of your brand and to best support your resale partners who are going to help you make more pie.
So let's talk for a minute about the partners that are going to help you make more pie. On the Amazon channel, typically we deal with two types of sellers, the authorized sellers and the unauthorized sellers. On Amazon, there are a lot of unauthorized sellers, and quite frankly, there's a lot of incentive for new unauthorized sellers to pile on. Much of the benefit of these pricing policies that have been put in place for authorized sellers only look at the authorized seller portion. And so for all that downloading of a MAP policy on Google that a brand has done, they don't yet have a strategy for dealing with unauthorized sellers. Tell me a little bit more about how you help your clients think about migrating from focusing exclusively on the authorized seller activity to addressing the unauthorized seller activity.
So it's a great question. And the challenge is when a brand sells product, it goes out the door. This product shows up in all sorts of the craziest places. We know that. Oftentimes who you think you're selling to isn't who you're selling to because they're selling to their friends, their cousin, they're sub-distributing it. Without proper controls, product shows up in all the wrong places, including liquidation channels and more. And your book that you wrote with Whitney Gibson does a great job of kind of detailing some of the craziness that happens, right? And so there's some great case studies in there that talk about where product ends up and how to mitigate some of these challenges. But with a MAP program and a MAP policy, you're right. You can kind of control to some level pricing, but really for the people you know. And so if people start popping up on Amazon or other places that you don't know, they're unknown to you, they're just somehow got product of yours, right. You can't do a whole lot. You decide to yell and scream at them. So what we do,
if you even know how to reach out to them.
If you do, right. And that's where having a database and being able to investigate who people are is critical. I mean, that's where companies like ours excel. We have an investigation team. We average 335 new seller identities uncovered a day. So we have an in-house team that excels in this with a private investigator-led background.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to know who people are. There's no question. But at its core, being able to differentiate and kind of go after as unauthorized sellers goes back to what kind of foundation you have legally. And this is where your foundational documents matter, and being able to be a difference between an authorized and unauthorized seller. Even if the product looks the same, there's actually a difference based on who they are and how they obtain the product is critical. And so really what we want to do is preserve rights for the brand so that we have a foundation in place. If the seller is unknown or not essentially on a white list as an authorized to sell where they're selling, there are remedies available to them based upon there being differences in the product. Sometimes they're called material differences, something you and Whitney talk a little bit about, right? But essentially these two products look the same but actually behave differently when a consumer has them in their hand because of that.
Yes.
Based upon that, you can go after them. And our systems, what we do is essentially, we have essentially like a workflow diagram that based upon who they are and where they are, our systems can action the reach out and next steps with this incredible database. But more than that, while our clients sleep, our systems are then reaching out based upon the diagram that maybe they sketched out on a napkin or their lawyer gave them, every part of the way, we'll take the appropriate action and elevate. The key is moving them through a workflow. The goal is that sometimes people don't know if you have a program in place. Like if they're a liquidator, they may not know.
Yep.
Somehow they got your product. It's informing them that what they're doing is wrong, so they have a chance to remedy the situation. But really quickly separating the camp. Who was testing you? Who didn't know? Who was intentional? And as you start moving down the intentional path, you actually have remedies to get the product back, move them off a marketplace, take other actions. But you'll have different teeth and different ways of chewing depending upon who they are and where they are. But it's critical that you have that foundation in place so you can treat authorized and unauthorized differently, and use some kind of automated way to have these people filter and separate, move them through a process.
So we've talked a lot about, the last few minutes about authorized versus unauthorized. Even if everybody who's selling your product is authorized, there is this strange learning that brands eventually go through where they realize that, let's say on Amazon, everybody's authorized, but Amazon is actively going out and finding lower prices that some seller is selling somewhere else. How do you help brands think through this question of price parity across channels, regardless of whether these sellers are authorized or not? How do you deal with this issue?
Well, look, the internet is an ecosystem. We spoke briefly, I mentioned briefly that in retail, it takes you 15 minutes from go to store.
Yes.
And online takes seconds. So, internet isn't just Amazon. The last numbers I saw, there's a recent report said 58% of global sales online happen in marketplaces. So globally, which is a huge number and rising, right? So there's a new marketplace model. Shopify is moving towards kind of an interesting marketplace model. TBD, where it ends up. We've got our Walmart or eBay. Groceries moving to marketplace transitions. Like there's all sorts of things moving that direction. But there's also this incredible number of websites. And Amazon is crawling and looking at all those price points. So is Walmart. And everybody's looking at each other. And so it's really critical that you think of internet as this ecosystem. It's just, it's easy to pick up Amazon as you pull out your phone and go, look what I found.
Right.
But it's actually not that simple. You have to have strategies that think about the wider scope. Because I guarantee you that the people you're selling to are thinking wider as well. And so we're all of it, so often we'll find that clients engage with us and they think that they have 60 or 70 accounts. There's one recently that had 60 or 70 accounts. They had almost 2,000 websites selling their products online. Websites, not marketplaces. Plus marketplace sellers. And it was insane.
Yeah.
And they were basically rebooting a brand. And you can't, no one's going to take your product until you fix this. And fortunately, we had a really quick solution for them. And we were able to implement it very quickly, and it's been tremendously successful. But it's a wide world of internet, and it's extremely chaotic, very dynamic, moves really quickly, and you have to have that broader scope. So if you start with visibility, who's doing what, where, when, what does it look like over time? From that, you can create strategies. And usually that's the first step is, hey, what's going on? Once you know the depth of the issue, then you can take action on it.
So Andrew, you've talked about the transparency of the internet. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about, besides using software like TrackStreet, what else would you recommend brands be thinking about doing themselves to become both more consistent and more transparent with how they choose to operate online?
Look, I think one, it comes down to, that's a great question. It really comes down to one, having a foundational set of documents that applies to everybody. So let's treat people the same. So what are the rules? Let's define the sandbox. You control over that. And let's take our best information that we have, images, content, description, make it easy for partners to get it, and create a clear set, a package that people can use to market and brand your product for you. Right? And think about carrots. What are the incentives for people to be good partners for you? Not just pricing, but what other values do they get for helping to drive your brand? Mm-hmm. And align yourselves with them. So how do you get visibility into their sales and that ensure that the sales are happening where they are, but reward them for bringing you new customers, right? I think that alignment across channels is really important. I think looking at and engaging experts in Amazon, Walmart, and such to optimize their presence. We want consistency of brand everywhere it's sold.
Yes.
Not everybody has in-house experts in some of these areas. So go get the best, right? And create a strategy that you'll be consistent with across marketplace.
So let's talk about some of these carrots. What are some of the carrots that you've seen brands effectively use to reward certain authorized partners who are participating in helping to create consistent branding, consistent pricing, consistent customer experience?
Yeah. So sometimes it's as simple as there could be special markup units for people that are only available at a certain tier. It can be really successful. There could be certain bundles, right? And that could be certain product. That could be swag. It could be certain kinds of branding or logos those clients can use on their websites or in store that separate them. More than just an authorized dealer badge, but a level of that. It could be inclusion on a where to buy on their website.
Yes.
Okay. It's all the things that help them sell more of your product for you. It could be access things like videos and educational. It could even be a technical support line that only customers of your platinum program sellers get access to, which is also, by the way, something that can be integrated into your foundational documents, part of an authorized dealer network. Those are things that signify to your partners that you do care, because that's what we're really asking. It's like, do you really care about us? I thought you loved me.
Yes, yes.
But
I care about you only so much as you care about me at the same time. And if we both care about each other, we're better aligning our incentives, then yes. But the struggle that we see is there are so many brands that historically have said, but we've always worked with these retailers and we golf with these retailers and we love these retailers, while at the same time those retailers are playing the games behind their backs, distributing products to other folks and so on. Getting brands to break through that mentality of, why am I so focused on my retailers when ultimately I have to create consistent experiences for customers? That's something that brands that don't have direct-to-consumer experience often struggle extensively with.
I don't think there's ever been a time when brands have been further away from their customers than they are now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a huge challenge. And I think particularly the times we're facing at the moment, where a lot of retail has been closed and is in transition, that has been eliminated. And so I think you raised a great point. Like, how do you align with your channels so that you get closer to the customer? And it's not you're trying to take the customer, but you want to participate in that conversation with the customer. And how can you drive brand loyalty through your partners is really the question.
Let me ask you this. At Buybox Experts, we consistently are surprised how many brands aren't working to control their pricing across sellers on Amazon, let alone other websites. There's still this perception that somehow online isn't that big a deal because it only accounts for a small percent of sales. These brands are focusing their sales efforts almost exclusively on brick and mortar, without a clear understanding of the negative impact that pricing discrepancies and branding discrepancies online can create for their overall business. What are your thoughts on that, and how do you get these brands to wake up and realize, okay, actually, we have been completely ignoring a rather big problem?
I think all brands will get there. The question is, do you get there when there's still time to save yourself? Mm-hmm. When price is a determining factor of people buying your product or not, that's what's driving it. And unfortunately, without some kind of program in place, that's what happens. Just a race to the bottom, particularly in places like Amazon. What happens is there's this incredible downward pressure on price across all parts of the channel. And very quickly, brands realize that not only does everybody want to buy it for so much less that they can't afford to make that same quality product, that they can't make it, or have to cheapen it, but then they can't do R&D on the cool new product they want to market. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden there's a perception in the marketplace that really amazing $200 product actually is a $100 product. And it competes with other $100 products that might have price controls, but they're different classes of product.
Right.
And so all the work the brands put in to create their place in the market and the pride they've put into what they build, because it's awesome, has eroded. And it's a terrible place to be. And so, I think as retail is transitioning right now, will continue to. I think people have gotten a pretty rude awakening that the internet is going to matter a lot more it has to them. I mean, I think it's mattered. Now they're starting to get it. And there's a scramble to figure out what that means. And we find that most people are not using technology to do anything on the internet yet. I mean, they're really just like very slowly figuring it out. And the internet's super complicated. It changes all the time. It's really complex. And the problems you face managing internet aren't well addressed by putting lots of people in a room on them. And so there's a learning curve and there's technology needed. And not only do you need experts to know what they're doing, but you actually need to give them buttons to push that take care of things for them. But usually what we've seen is people come when their retailers have made enough noise. They started screaming enough. So they're reactive. I think what's now starting to happen is the people screaming are in turn inside the organization. And those are the warning signs. And the question is, are you listening internally of where the market's really headed? And are you able to see the shift to online and the reaction and the behavior online, which is to be radically different to accelerate?
Let's shift gears here for a minute, Andrew. I want to talk about when brands decide to finally do something about controlling their pricing, stabilizing prices across channels. There's a lot of stuff that has to happen within the brand organization. And that period of transition is one that, quite frankly, a lot of brands are scared of the 3 to 9 months that they may have to deal with retailers either being cut off or retailers having to adjust to no longer being able to sell online. Talk to me about some of the clever nuances you've seen brands use during that transition period to be able to move from the chaotic situation to one of stable situation where everybody understands the rules and everybody is to some level abiding by these new rules. Talk to me about that transition period and what you've seen companies do.
Yeah, so I think there are a couple pieces here. First of all, what can people expect through this period and what comes out the other side? Without question, what we see are people that commit to a program. By commit, I mean there'll be times when it feels like it's not working and this has been a bad decision. It's getting through that stage. We all know sometimes making change is hard.
Yep.
You got to get through the dirt. But we see every single time that the end result is increase in profitability. So, for example, we had one company in the pet world went through this process, and it was not pretty. But what we saw in the end was that they had a 60% increase in retail sales. So, meaning that one is the stores they dealt with widened their product and deepened their product, which is a huge win. They got accounts that wouldn't take them in, all of a sudden took them in. This is all of a sudden because they believe that they actually do love them.
Yes.
They care about them. And we actually saw that their Amazon specific sales at a higher price point tripled. Right? So that's what came out of it for these guys. It was millions of dollars worth of revenue. So that's what you want to get towards. How long does it take? It really depends on the brand. We've seen within weeks 92% decrease in unauthorized sellers and MAP violations. Right? Like that's an example of one recent brand we took on. Tremendously effective. Now, the process is clear communication throughout. You want people to know what's coming. You are now proactive. And it's about consistency, proactiveness, communication.
Yep.
And it's holding the line. And this isn't about punishing people. This is about rewarding your partners. This is good for them. It's good for you. And the ones that are complaining and making the most noise maybe aren't your partners. Right? And so, it starts if you go through distribution, communicating what's expected with that channel. So, hey, we've got a new program in place. Here's what it is. If you're working on an authorized dealer program, it's very possible that some of these rules may say stores can sell our product, but no one can sell our product on the internet anywhere. No one can even buy it from you, distributor, unless they're on our white list. To get on our white list, they've got to go apply to be on that white list from us. I know this is inconvenient. I'm sorry, but these are the new rules. It might be uncomfortable. Right? Those process of communication, what's expected, distributor, retailer, e-tailer. You have to make some hard choices. You'll have to be consistent in that. And as you, communicate what's coming ahead of time, begin the process and roll it out, it's staying consistent throughout with the messaging. It's being proactive, unilateral in your responses, meaning you're not picking and choosing. You are actually following through with people. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to take certain punishments. Do you have some room in some of these policies to make decisions and based upon what's happening and where? But you want to have consistency. And what we see is, one, depending on how much supply in the market, it might take some time for it to dry up. Places that are leaks. And so there might be a period of time where people are just simply liquidating. So prices may drop.
Yep.
You're going to clear out the market. It's unpleasant.
Yep.
But it's holding strong. But what happens is those people clear out. You separate the world. It's the filter process. You're peeling the onion. Who are the good kids? Who are the bad kids? Your mom looking out the window. They're going to start jabbing each other with sharp sticks, but they stop jabbing each other when they know that mom's watching. And that's your job, maybe our job.
Great analogy. Great analogy, mom watching the kids.
Yeah, it's little kids and puppies. I mean, in the best way, because we love them. Mm-hmm. We're doing what we're doing because we care. And so you go through this process of you separating them, seeing consistently. And what we start seeing then is one, prices may stabilize. Generally, if that's the goal, we're stabilizing pricing, might increase. Margins are preserved through the channels. And you may have a short-term dip in your sales. You may, sometimes you don't. Right? But certainly as inventory clears out, you will see that adjustment in the inventory, but the pie hasn't changed. Your pie is still the pie. But what's happening is you're going to start changing who's eating the pie.
Right.
And so that will, all of a sudden you start seeing pull through, and generally markets expand because all of a sudden you have partners that care about helping you sell because you're protecting them. And their pie actually increases.
So let's talk about protecting your partners. There are a number of companies out there that are in this business of helping to remove unauthorized sellers. And one of the challenges that I have seen with this approach is, companies saying, well, I got rid of 80% of your unauthorized sellers, so look at what a great job we've done. The problem is the 20% that are left behind are big, sophisticated gray market sellers. They're lawyered up. They know how to source product 10 different ways. So getting rid of 80% of the unauthorized sellers simply moved around who had a piece of the pie. It didn't get rid of the fact that a lot of the pie is still being served by the wrong kind of companies. How do you help brands think through how much of a clean channel they need before they're going to start to see positive benefit that consistently will remain in place?
There are lots of people that claim they can remove sellers for you, but you have to be very careful. What we don't want is someone filing false counterfeit claims on your behalf. What we don't want is people going into the brand registry and hammering removal orders for people based on trademark. There may be tools that appear to be used for something, but the reality is that's not how you remove unauthorized sellers. If you do have a counterfeit that's a true counterfeit with a test buy, you would go through the brand registry, and that's where you could do it. But if you keep on pushing these buttons for the wrong reasons, they stop working. If you are filing face counterfeit claims through the Amazon portal, you do expose yourself to a huge liability. Those people are doing that for you could be causing a huge problem. So there's a difference between counterfeit product and inauthentic product that is not right based upon being sold by the wrong person with material differences, all based on the foundation of your documents. But you want to be careful what you're doing here. And so when someone says, I'm going to kick all these people off for you, ask a lot of questions. That should be a warning sign. If they're guaranteeing a certain removal rate, watch out. Right. These really bite you in the butt later. But on some level, yes, you want to get rid of the low-hanging fruit, and you're going to clear up some of the market. But yes, it looks great. It's addressing part of the problem, and it's a cleaner report to show your boss. But have you saved? Have you really addressed the problem? No, you're getting there.
No, not at all.
You're not. You haven't. And so you really need to looking at your supply, right? It's how are people getting product? What are your reseller requirements? Is there sub-distribution? How do you start cutting off source? Going back down to your foundational documents. Do you have audit rights of how you can sell, who people have been sold to? Do you have ability to track and trace through your product? There's interesting ways of doing that now. We've met some interesting companies lately that have some interesting technologies where we can kind of see where things come from. But this is where it gets more complicated and sophisticated. You are going to do some investigative work. You need to do some test buys. You need to maybe use your auditing rights. You're going to work backwards to your channels. You might want to involve some legal in this because diversion is tough. And those of us who've been in e-commerce for a while might have been doing it at some point in time too.
Yeah.
Right? They're
Oh,
games.
I can speak, between having helped recruit unauthorized sellers in the past and having been an unauthorized seller myself at some point. I learned a lot about how leaky these channels were and how leaky these brands let these channels be. And quite frankly, it's kind of scary when you see household name brands who literally have no clue what their salespeople are doing in terms of bastardizing product and letting anybody have access to it if they have cash. It's really crazy how some of these sales incentives that are put in place motivate all the wrong kind of behaviors that brands don't realize they're creating problems for themselves long term.
I can't remember. I mean, I can't even count how many times when I was a big e-tailer,
Mm-hmm.
I had people call me at the end of the month or end of the quarter and be like, "Hey, Andrew, I need a big order.
Yep.
What can you do for me?" I say, "Well, what can you do for me?"
Yep.
"Well, I'll give you an extra 30. Great. Well, I'll take 80 grand, 100 grand of that product, and I'll take this of that. And what else? But how about if I order 200 grand? What you do? Like, well, hold on, I'll get back to you. And they go to their boss. They come back. They're like, you know what? I'll give you an extra rebate. Okay. Well, where's that product going to go? Well, they didn't care. They're chasing their number. And
Right.
You're absolutely right. Then it goes 15 directions.
Right.
Chasing numbers is dangerous. But this is hard. I mean, when you start getting to the more sophisticated sellers, they are sourcing from lots of people. And when I was a seller, Amazon used to try to get product from me. Maybe it was you back in the early days, trying to source from us. I don't know. It might have been. And so, yeah, this is where it gets complicated. But the job is to peel the onion. The safest city or town in America still has crime.
Mm-hmm.
You have to stay on it, and you have to be proactive. You're going to peel the onion, but you can get to the core. It's amazing how effective you can be if you're consistent and diligent, and you decide as an organization this is a priority. Also means you think about how you incentivize your salespeople. You reward them for compliance too. Hey, our channel's really clean. You guys get a bonus. So,
yep.
Yeah, it's aligning with partners and internally as well.
So, Andrew, let's change gears here for a minute. I want to talk a little bit about turning points for you professionally, where as you were building brands and working with brands, when did you realize you were good at working with brands to help them with their online oversight? Or let me put the question a little bit differently. One doesn't just say, hey, I'm going to build a software company that specifically looks at identifying unauthorized sellers and violating sellers. How did you think about getting into the space, and how did you identify that this is something where you thought you could be successful?
So I think like many stories, there's not a straight line.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of ups and downs and twists and turns. I mean, I think the bottom line is, at heart, I'm a marketer. I've always loved applying technology to hard problems that need solutions. And I think people like to talk about superpowers, right? We all have something that we think, I think really makes us different.
Yes.
And mine has always been that I can walk into a room and figure out what's missing quickly and solve it. And so in my last businesses, we reimagined how to acquire customers and how to drive growth using technology in ways people hadn't before. And it was transformative. And as I was talking to all these brands, seeing that the future was right in front of them, but they weren't really seeing it, and they were running the other direction from it, that there was an incredible opportunity to help them move along a life cycle to re-empower them and drive incredible growth. Because again, the internet is the most incredible machine if you utilize it right. And so I got really excited about how do we create new ways of bringing brands closer to consumers, educating across communities, driving knowledge that transforms sales based on value and communication, not based on price. Price isn't the lever, but how do you make a flywheel? And that's what gets me really excited. And I saw there's an incredible opportunity to build things that hadn't existed yet, to take some of what I'd built previously and commercialize it, scale it, but work closely with companies. And that I was really good at helping them understand where to go, but also incrementally how to get there. So how do you connect the pieces so that you can go through a journey of incremental steps to creating a machine that starts flying? And that for me was really exciting. And seeing our customers get it, even in conversations of all of a sudden their eyes light up when they get that they could do this and how to get there, incredibly exciting. So for me and for us, we think about our first step is how do we look at the pain points that our customers face every day? and rank them, hierarchy of pain. And how do we solve them? So they go to bed at night, and come to work in the morning, and the world's a better place. And that's super exciting. And that's really about empowerment. And for us, it's a core. I mean, our driving success for people that use our systems and people we talk to on a daily basis is really exciting. So it really started clipping in, and really in my last company, but every time we had a conversation where people's eyes lit up and they just got it, we knew we were on the right track. And I think for all of us who are in e-commerce now, some of us have been in it a long time, but we're still in the infancy of what we're going to be. But the path is accelerating. And so, it's incredibly exciting and fun to be part of this journey where we're starting to ramp things up very fast. And, that knowledge transformation is incredibly important. We're going to have to connect the dots faster than we ever have. That's a really good place to be. We're all going to be thinking about e-commerce very differently in 4 or 5 years.
I want to ask you one final set of questions for our discussion today. Talk to me about who are some of your professional mentors, and what kind of advice have they given you that has really helped you focus to do what you do today?
I've made the mistake in my career of being lone wolf far too often. I had to take, at times a very rocky road and learn some hard lessons because I was just too stubborn to be listening. I'd say that in the last several years, particularly, I've had the really good fortune of just having some incredibly successful and smart people guiding me. And I think through my life, I've had a number of mentors, but often my ears weren't ready and weren't open enough. Interestingly, my grandfather was probably the first. And he would say, learning is earning. So kind of keeping your ears open and paying attention around you. He's a self-educated man who dropped out of school when he was 8 and self-taught. And so he was hugely influential, as are other members of my family. But professionally, in the last number of years particularly, I've learned a lot from people who have taken an idea and grown it and scaled it in the software space specifically is really thinking about customer first. How do you measure success, and really thinking about keeping vision intact, but making sure that throughout the process, you're focused on the success of the customer that drives everything. And so, the interesting thing about software and e-commerce is it moves much faster than other industries. So, while I was building technology and the last things I did, they were retail, e-tail, they were very different. Software moves much faster. So I've been very fortunate to have people within our company, some of our investors have scaled large companies in the software space. So thinking about how do we put the parts together and remain customer-centric and build systems that keep us accountable and transparent. It hasn't been easy. And I'm still kind of looking and building those mentors. But I think every stage of business you go through, you find new people that take you to the next level. So I'm still in that process. But certainly, our last we're venture capital backed and funded, and having really incredible group of investors that have built some of the largest e-commerce platforms in the world previously. And each of them have one by one helped guide me through, how do you build a sales process? How do you build the customer success process? How are you dealing with customers and transparency and in brand consistency? Was we have to protect our brand just like we protect our clients' brands, and we have to communicate the value of what we do in a way that is kind of universal and thinking about what's next without getting too distracted. And so, it's been an evolutionary process, just like everybody we work with. We're all growing and learning. But very, very fortunate, to, particularly in the last number of years, have people around me that have really been tremendously helpful, keep me on track.
Andrew, I want to thank you for joining us today and sharing your insights with our audience. For those of you interested in learning more about Andrew's organization, please visit TrackStreet.com. Thanks for joining us today on the BuyBox Experts podcast. And now to finish today's podcast, I'd like to share some final thoughts. For third-party sellers to be successful on Amazon, a critical lever will be soliciting feedback from customers. We at BuyBox Experts are really big fans of the team at Ecom Engine and its tools that help Amazon sellers to simplify the process of messaging customers of Amazon orders. To learn more, go to ecomengine.com. And with that, I want to thank you for listening today, and I look forward to joining you next time on the BuyBox Experts podcast.
Thanks for listening to the BuyBox Experts podcast. Be sure to click subscribe, check us out on the web, and we'll see you next time.